They went?
Or we're gonna come back out.
Yeah.
Kick out a bunch of people.
No, we're going into the.
Oh, we're going on.
Morning, everyone. I'd like to open our regular board meeting of Tuesday, September 10th. And if we could, let's have a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This section is for comments on items not listed on the agenda. Persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. While no action or discussion may be undertaken by the board on topics presented in this section, board members are listening carefully to these comments and appreciate your input. Do we have any public? Please step up to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is. Good morning. My name is Marilyn Schiller. I own a home on Yankee Hill Road. I'm on the San Diego ditch system that you operate. I recently received a letter that you're changing your payment schedule from miner's inch to metered. It didn't address any kind of a charge or anything for this, and so I guess we'll be notified eventually what the charges will be. But I certainly hope it's less than what we're paying now, or I'm paying now. It goes to a house. We have a chlorinator, it goes into a tank. We have a chlorinator, we have filters on the house, and we still get muddy water. Okay, with residue left in the tub or in the sink. This is what it was in 1950 when my parents first moved there. So nothing has changed over all the years, and it is what it is, and we realize that, except I pay more than some people that get treated water that they can actually drink or brush their teeth with, and I pay $160 a month for water that, you know, you wouldn't wash your dog with. But, you know, we kind of accepted that. I can't believe it's that way, because with all the clean water bills that have been on the ballot, and it seems like every dumps into that our pipe comes off of doesn't even get maintained, but occasionally. Because when you clean the ditch and the box is emptied, it is full, packed with mud. Our screen is packed with mud. There's all kinds of debris in there. And so that's one of the problems of our muddy water. I'm just hoping that the schedule for metered water will be a lot less than what we're paying now, which is miner's inch. And I don't know what can ever be done other than you put a tank up and like other ditch customers and treat it. And so that's all I've got to say, is we still got the same water we had in 1950. And want to know if there's a schedule of charges that are going to be on that. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. We'll collect your name and your address. Somebody from customer service will get a hold of you and try to explain things. Somebody from customer service should get a hold of you and try to explain things to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, Melissa, please.
Okay, closed session, A, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property APN 085-050-001 et al. Agency negotiators Don Perkins, Jesse Barton, and Tom Johnson. Other party to negotiations, Mike Schoner, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, under negotiation, price and terms of payment.
Okay, thank you for that. So with that, we will recess out of our regular board meeting into closed session. And as soon as closed session is over, we will resume with our regular board meeting. Thank you. Yes.
Estimated time for the
Okay, I'd like to bring us back into regular session with the like to report that there was no reportable action in the closed session. So with that, Melissa, if you would.
Okay, consent calendar. Item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of August 27th, 2024. Item number 2, approval of reimbursement claims for director's statement of meetings attended and or travel expenses and claim summary for August 2024.
Okay, any board member want to pull anything? No? Okay, well, I do. Claim summary is what I would like to pull. And why don't we get that taken care of and then we can do both of them at the same time. Okay, with that being said, on 2 of 23, we have CWEA class registration and also Town and Country Hotel reservation. I think they're probably connected, I don't know. What are those for? Who did it? You know?
CWEA stands for California Water Environment Association, and our collection staff all have certifications through the CWEA. So they host numerous trainings throughout the year that they have to do for their contact hours and their
Okay.
continuing education.
Okay.
And some of
great.
them are out of town, so if they're multiple days, then that would be the reason for the hotel stay.
I get it, but there's no name there, which is, you know, as to who did it, who went to the training. So we might want to include that in the future, because I know when any of the board members go anywhere, there's always a board member name with the activity. Then there's on that same page, CalRA membership. What is that group?
California Rural Water Agency is another agency where we get or continuing education hours, a lot of water treatment. Dawn, I think you've been to a number of conferences and trainings through Cal Rural Water. So it's a good organization that we get a lot of good continuing education information about rules and regs coming down the pike. They have their own advocacy, similar to Aqua, but on a much smaller scale.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's amazing as I go through the claim summary, how many items are like this, but it goes to show what it takes to run this organization and keep up to date with all the new regulations, everything. And I guess this would be the same thing with the CalPERS educational forum on that same page.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And also on the same page, Airtame Hub. That's interesting.
That's the device that we use for streaming inside the conference room and engineering.
Oh, okay, great. 9 of 23. Environmental Associates. USB Central Dowel Supply something. I don't know. Do you know what that is? 9 of 20.
23?
Yeah.
And so now that I'm here, what is it? Which one?
Environmental Associates is one, and then it says USB Central Dowel Supply CONT period. I don't know what that is. There's two line items there. One for 4,346, and one for 2,497.
Yeah, Director Ring, and that both of those are for our effort to secure USBR Central Valley Water Project long-term water service contract out of New
New
Melones.
Melones. I had a feeling it could be. Okay. Boy, I hope we can bring that thing to a close here pretty soon. That's costing us some money. Okay, on the same page. This one's near and dear to my heart. Ferguson Enterprises. Meter order, 6,972. How many meters is in that order? I don't need an exact number, but just, kind of, and are we getting close? I know that we were backlogged on those. Those are those remote read meters and so on. How are we doing on that project?
My understanding is they're still backlogged. Like if you notice that date on there, it was May.
Yeah, I
that They
didn't like
ordered
it.
it and yeah. So they are still backlogged. I don't know the exact amount. But if those are standard meters, I think they're between $400 to $600 each. So that would give you the idea of how much that
Oh,
order is
okay.
for. And as far as our percentage of how many manual meters we have versus radio read, we're about 70% radio read.
70%, so we got a ways to go. Okay. 12 of 23, Industrial Automation Group. This one was kind of tweaked my interest. Ignition controls, engine support, 40 hours. What in the world is that? Is that something for out in the shop?
Engineering support.
Oh, yeah, engineering support, right.
Do you want me to?
That would be for ignition support for regional, ignition software that runs regional.
So, we have a couple of SCADA systems now, right? We have our old SCADA Aquasierra. but
Right.
All of our smarter plants, newer smarter plants, use ignition for our SCADA service.
Okay.
So this is we industrial automation group, we call them AG. They were just bought out. They're out of the Valley, Modesto. That's who we contract to do all our workforce in-house.
Great. Okay, so we're talking about upgraded system really is what we're talking about for the new plant down there. Okay, last thing, and this one's really good. I like 16 of 23. Mother load goats. Now I don't know where on Phoenix Lake, or I know it's not on, but around Phoenix Lake. But that they are being used. But what I wanted to bring up on that, I'm really happy to see that this is being used. Goats are great for keeping down fire hazard and that sort of thing. Is there any possibility that we could look into having this for those areas that have been treated for, that we've gone through? We had grants to clean up around various plants and tanks and things like that. Maybe run the goats back through every year or two, just keep it down so we don't have to pay all that money again to get it cut down.
I grinned ear to ear when I saw that because I don't know that I was privy to it before. Could have been my foggy days, but yeah, I'm excited of all the opportunities. I just went up to last Friday. I went out to the Shaw's Flat tank site because I hadn't been there in a while. I was looking at some of the projects and that could use some maintenance. And I thought, what a great place to put these goats. So the next all staff meeting, I'm going to challenge our raw water superintendent, Kurt, who's the one who ordered those, and Eric Hall to see where else can we use these goats.
Right.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a press release,
Okay.
seriously.
Okay.
That's really, that would be heartwarming for the community as
Okay.
well.
Done.
Those goats work hard, boy. I want to tell you. You just got to keep the mountain
It
lions
sure
away
impressed
from.
Kurt, and he's not all that easy to impress. So.
Okay, that's it for me. So if we have nothing more from the board, then I'll bring it out to the public. Any public comments? I don't see any. I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, looks like it's 5-0. With that, whenever you get caught up there, Melissa.
Regular business, item number 3, budget report and balance sheet for year ending June 30th, 2024.
Okay, great. This is me. And sorry, 1 second, it always takes me a moment to get the technology to work. All right, here we go. Well, today I'm pleased to present to you what we as the finance department have been working hard on for the last couple of months. And just as a introduction, I think you're used to seeing these earlier on in the year. I changed that, you probably more around July or so. I changed that. I have a little bit different style in that when they're presented earlier, there's still lots of activity that goes on after that point. So I changed it to about now, that would have been 2 weeks ago. I apologize, I was sick that day, but so this is much closer to final. Now, there are still a few adjustments that are going to be taking place, or that have actually since taken place since I prepared this. And because really the final is what you'll receive after the audit. So these are most certainly unaudited year-end results. They're still preliminary, things still could change, but this is a pretty good indication of where I think we're going to be at in the final. There are still a few adjustments out there, but this is closer than maybe what you've seen previously, where there was still lots of adjustments that would need to happen in the year-end process, but we are very close to the end of that year-end process. So this will give you a good indication of what our audited financial statements should look like. Now, auditors can always find something that we've missed too, so it still could change, but I feel fairly confident at this point that this is close to where we'll end up at. So anyways, with that disclaimer, this is our 2024 preliminary year-end results. And just to kind of, I think I've shown you this slide many times before, and I apologize, but I like to just kind of show each time the budget cycle. You guys are familiar with this, but they all interrelate. So that first part of the budget cycle that you all are aware of is adopting the annual budget. And when we do that, it's in accordance with our budgeting policy, in which we establish some some goals that have been set out in that budgeting policy. It establishes the spending limits by fund, and then it has some goals specifically that we want to achieve. For example, that our current expense is going to be less than or equal to our current revenue. And by the end of it, our net income, which means all of the revenue we've received, and after we pay out all of our operating expenses, after we pay our debt service, and after we pay for our capital projects, that we will be greater than or equal to 0. So that's the goal or the target that we set out when we established that budget at the beginning of that cycle. Then through the year, we're doing review to make sure that we are hoping that we'll meet those goals. And we present things to you on a quarterly basis. So you've seen that. We also look at very extensively, again, mid-year, and make any adjustments if we need to. And then we get to the final results. And so what you're gonna see today, there's kind of 2 parts to that final results, where we compare the year-end actuals to that budget that we established. And then, which you won't see today, but you will see later, is the annual audit. So going into today, the anticipated final results, and as I said before, there could still be some adjustments, but this is close to where I think we're going to end up at. And in your packet, you have like the more detailed numbers. I'm going to go through kind of more on a visual graphics form through this presentation. But looking first at revenue, the bottom line of those detailed numbers that you had in your packet was that water revenue is $1.8 million better than budget, and sewer is $6.7 million better than budget, which is great news. But some of the things that I wanted in graphic form, you can see that the orange is our budget. The first set of columns is water, the second is sewer, and then the third is the total of the 2. And you can see in both of those instances that The orange is lower than our blue, which is what our actuals were. But a couple of things that I want to point out with that revenue is that part of that reason is like that and why it's in that situation is that our actuals include grants. So in budget, we don't actually budget for those grants. When I present the actuals, it does include the grants. So grants make up a big part of that difference. And our actuals also include connection and capacity fees. We don't budget for those, or at least we haven't historically. I did change that for the next fiscal year, but in this fiscal year, those weren't budgeted. So that's part of the reason for it as well. So just keep that in mind. But then looking at the details, looking at the numbers, some of the things that I wanted to point out of why we're higher than budget. And just to point out first that this first column is budget. The second column is our actuals. The third column is the difference between the two. And then the fourth is the percentage of budget that represents. But in some of those specifics that make up all of our revenue, you can see, for example, at utility billing, which is basically all of our user charges, what they're paying, that's their rates, right? We are almost exactly at budget. So we're a little bit lower, but in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty close. And even with that, actually, and this is one of those adjustments that has to take place just because of timing. We still had one cycle to bill at this point in time, which in that cycle, it includes some pre-June 30th billings. So that number actually will change a little bit, but just to give you an idea. So we'll probably get right there at budget after that's included. Some of the other items that make up that difference is, for example, and this is kind of a big one, is our investment income. It was much higher than what we originally anticipated. So interest rates went up this year. And so we have money in LAIF and those interest rates were higher than what they've been in years. And so, which is great in that we were able to realize that difference and we're able to receive more in investment income. And it also is because the money that we had invested outside of LAIF with, you get those quarterly reports from Chandler Investment or Chandler Asset Management. That money that had been invested there, right at the timing of when it got invested is kind of when it was right after 2020. And so there was actually some losses associated with that. Now they're unrealized losses. By the time we cash it out, it will all be back to whole. But we have to show those in the balance sheet that we do have these unrealized losses. Well, they've started to recover. And so that happened this year. So that's also why the investment income was higher than what we budgeted. And then the last part which I already mentioned, is that so much of that is related to grants and capacity and connection fees. You can see that under capital grants, as well as the capacity and connection charges. So that's a big reason for why we're better than budget as far as revenue with water. And sewer, yes, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to point out that for the ratepayers that may be interested or whatever, how much we have been working hard to leverage the ratepayer fees with those grants. I mean, that's huge.
Yes.
That is huge.
Yeah, and it's like, you know where I'm going because I have a slide that I'll show you in a moment.
Great.
That will kind of show you that in a graphic form.
Great.
So just like water, sewer revenue is almost exactly the same. So utility billing, right on budget. And again, the reason for why we have our actuals look better than our budget is because of investment income and capital grants. And in sewer, you notice that's a huge number as in capital grants, about 5.7 million.
Question. So the Twin Heart Community Services District pays us something, right? And so does JSG, they pay us. Where does that show up here?
It shows up in utility billing.
In utility billing?
Yes, that
Okay.
includes all of our just, regular households as well as what we call subscribers. And it also includes our septage.
Okay. What percentage of our utility billing is in these larger Just curious, I know Jamestown pays us a year about 120,000. Is
Yes.
it the same for about Twain Hart?
No, Twain Hart pays more. I think they're in the $400,000
Okay.
range. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
you're welcome.
That's a chunk,
Mhm.
yeah.
So anyways, sewer revenue is, the reasons behind it are almost identical to water. And going to your point, Director Ringen, I showed you this graph, I think, when we did budget for fiscal year 25, but this graph represents of all of our different revenue sources, what percentage they make up of the total revenue. And so as far as budget is concerned, you can see that our service charges or our utility rates, and this is both of them together, water and sewer, represents about 92% of our revenue sources. But when you get to our actuals, you can see that changes, because really this orange piece right here represents the grants that we've received this year, and that was $7.3 million, and that's 19% of our revenue sources, and that drops our service charges down to 72% of our revenue sources. So that was a very good point, Director Ringen, and yes, thank you, and I wanted to point that out as well.
That's great.
So after revenue, we then go to our operating expenses, and we had good news here as well. And this is just operating, so we're not at capital yet, but water had a savings of about $587,000 better than budget. And sewer was very close to the same at about $540,000 in budget. And that's what this looks like in a graphical form. Now, again, this doesn't include capital expenses yet. And the other thing I wanted to mention that's kind of good news about this is this was after adjustments that we did for PERS and OPEB, because those numbers fluctuate greatly each year. And so even with those changes and those numbers that we have to realize in the financial statements themselves, we still were positive. Oops, excuse me. Then looking at the details, you can see where basically all of those savings took place. Much of that was in personnel, and part of that's because our operating personnel salaries end up going towards capital improvement projects. So we see the savings on the operating side because of that. All of the other things were just, we're very close to budget in each one of them, essentially. This services one showed that it was over budget, but that was basically due to grant-related consultants. So we hadn't budgeted for those because it was going to be covered by grant. So anyways, that's why that's negative, essentially. And then the same for sewer, it's almost the same type of situation. Again, personnel differences due mainly to CIP labor and vacancies. Repairs is over budget, but that was due to grant-related expenses. And for example, the fuels reduction grant at Twain Hart wastewater treatment plant. But again, it was covered by grant, if that makes sense. And interest expense here shows that it's over, but there's an adjustment that was done after these were presented where it doesn't actually end up being over in the end result. Now that takes us to CIP, and I apologize because this is a very, very small, lots of small information on this slide. That is all of the CIP projects for the year. But what I wanted to bring your attention to, which is still difficult to see, but put a blue arrow to it, and that is the total dollar amount that we spent on CIP this year, and it's $16.4 million. So that includes both our grant related CIP projects as well as just our regular CIP projects. And $5.3 million of that was in water projects, 11.2 million in sewer. So when you take all of that into consideration, you take our revenue, less our operating expenses and less our CIP, you get to kind of the bottom line here. And so I've separated by each fund. You can see water and you can see sewer. You can see our revenue for water, 22.8 million, less all of our operations and maintenance of 13.6, left us a net before capital expenses and before any loan payments that we've made at 9.2 million. After capital and debt service or loan payments, we actually had a surplus of 3.7 million. Sewer, very much kind of the same type of situation. You can see the numbers there. And then they ended up with a surplus of 2.5 million. So the good news, and this is something that hasn't been seen, I went back 10 years, but what that surplus at the end of the month has, or excuse me, the year for water has done is this right here. Essentially, before the year began, for the year that ended at fiscal year 23, our unrestricted net position, we were in the negative of 2.2 million. With our surplus this year of 3.8, we will have an unrestricted net position in the positive of 1.6 million. And I went back 10 years, and I didn't go back farther than that. I went back 10 years in our audited financial statements, and we haven't been positive in the last 10 years. So that's a fantastic situation to be in. So that's what it looks like for water. For sewer, we already were in the positive. Last year, we were at 7.5 million in our unrestricted net position. This year, we're adding 2.5 million to that. So we'll be around the ballpark of 10. So again, I'm still cautiously optimistic on it. These are projected numbers, but pretty close to what I think it's going to end up at. Again, if auditors see something that we missed, it could change, but that's kind of the cautiously optimistic side of where I think we're going to end. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions about it. Otherwise.
I have
Yes,
one
go
question.
ahead.
Okay, yeah, this is great. I love your graphics and clarity. Question is that extra money, if we have to go for a bond, is that the kind of money that helps us look solid?
Yeah, I mean, anytime. So many of these financial statements are for those types of situations. Exactly. It's when we're going out for loans, when we're doing various things. That's who looks at, not the ones I've presented, but they'll look at the audited financial statements. So seeing a positive unrestricted net position, yes, is an asset to us.
Good.
Anybody else? I think that this is a great report. Appreciate your hard work on it. And I think it shows that TUD is definitely keeping its promise to the ratepayers. We're getting the job done, and we're being very mindful of their money. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
Well,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Hey, Director,
I'm sorry, I can't see your face, your hand.
sorry. Yeah, Carolyn, I got just one question. Okay, when you don't show, and I think I understand this, but I want to make sure. So you don't show the grant money on the budget side, but you do show it in the actuals. Okay, how about on the expense side? Do you show the expenses on the budget for those grant projects? Or do they not come in until the grants have been approved and we receive the money?
Yeah, so much of those grants are related to capital projects. And so when the budget is presented to you at the beginning of the year, it doesn't include those capital related expenses as well. So it's the same, if that makes sense, on both sides. In budget, you don't see the capital, you don't see the grant revenue. You also don't see the grant related expenses. In the actuals, you do. You see both of them on both sides.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I just don't want this moment to go by without an acknowledgement of and appreciation of where we are today at the water fund. You know, Carolyn went back 10 years and she could tell that we've been in the negative for at least 10 years. So 2014, I became aware of certain things of this nature in about 2010 or so. And I do believe around that time, we were not only in the negative, but we were $10 million in the negative. And the finance department for all these years has worked really hard to get us out of that negative into a positive reserve. That's pretty impressive. It's a monumental moment in TUD's time that the water fund is no longer in a negative reserve balance. At some point, Carolyn, I may ask you to kind of give us a presentation. You know, we have a reserve policy. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we have a board adopted reserve policy. And it's the finance department's to endeavor to get to where we're meeting that policy. And so maybe someday down the road, if you have some spare time, and I know you don't, but we can give an update to the board on where we are as compared to our policy. But anyway, this is a monumental time in our boards. This is just big. This is really big for us to finally be in a positive. So kudos to everybody involved. It takes a lot of work to get there.
Okay, anybody else?
Just want to say, Carolyn, thank you.
Yeah, just amazing job. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, if nothing else, then I'll bring it out to the public. Anybody have any comments or anything? No? Okay. And I'll bring it back to the board for us to, I guess we're gonna just
I'll move that we accept and file this report.
yeah,
I'll second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, I vote, Melissa.
Item number 4, 2024 Strategic Plan Progress Report.
Okay, this is my item. And you know, I know you've only had a few days since you've received this lengthy document. And I am not going to read every item to you. But in essence, right, the board has adopted strategic plan from 2019. And it's been at least our practice, if not a policy, that the staff present you with some sort of a progress report to the plan. So here we are doing that once again. And this year and maybe more so next year, I learned to appreciate myself and staff going through this. I think it's really important that we reflect on what we've done and does it match the plan and how well we're doing, and looking forward, you know, what do we need to do? What can we do to improve upon the situation? So in the document that you received this year, I think similar to last year, the things that are bold in writing here is the things that we've accomplished or pursuing this year compared to last year. So anything that's not bolded and above is things that we've worked on or accomplished in the past. So again, I'm not going to, we have seven goals, a number of strategies, and another number of action items. I'm not going to go through each and every one of those, but I will go through, you know, a fair amount of those. And if this becomes arduous, somebody just throw up the red flag, the white flag, and I'll suspend action. Because really, this is something that I think the board should look at over time, not just the next few days or the last few days, but just over time, just reflect on these things and see, and then come to us with proposed thoughts and ideas on how we did or what we need to do to improve. So goal number 1, enhance and improve water security. You know, we continue to pursue the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation's Central Valley Project long-term water service contract. That's just an arduous thing. We're dealing with the federal government, and it's just slow. I know Director Ringen did some outreach to Congressman McClintock to see what he can do and his staff to do to help us further and get that thing moving. And you know, there's some evidence that effort paid off. So we'll see. We'll keep you posted on how that's going. Strategy number 2, reduce system losses and improve water system efficiency to meet multiple community benefits. Just recently, we completed the Techite Phase 3A and 3B, right, which has been prone to many breaks over the years. We've just completed that. So we have one small segment left, the Techite Phase 3C, that's going out to bid pretty soon, like within the next few days or weeks. So that's good. And then, you know, the other one down here, this Longway and South Fork Mainline Intertie project to consolidate the Meadow Tank Rogue and Tehachapi booster pump stations. We just completed that in June. Those are significant improvements that are going to show benefits, monetary benefits to our ratepayers down the road, you know, by way of not having to renovate a tank, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a pop. And the Rogue and Tehachapi are some of our more expensive booster pump stations. We're supplying that zone by gravity now versus pumping up. So those are significant improvements there.
Hey, Don, I got a question.
Yeah.
Hey, when we're replacing pipeline like the Techite there, do we take into account that we may want to upsize the pipe when we do that?
Yes, yes, we do. I'm looking at Eric to maybe chime in, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I don't know what size it was, nor do I know what size we put in, but we do certainly analyze, make sure it's going to fit the need of the day.
Okay, yeah.
And not to mention, we've also kept in, especially phase 1 and phase 2, those were appropriately sized. I should have mentioned that. Those were appropriately sized to accommodate for the new regional water treatment plant up in Sierra Pines to serve that entire zone later
Okay, all right, thank you,
when we
Don.
consolidate. Good question, though. Another significant project that was completed was the Crystal Falls and Cedar Ridge intertie project. Where in that case, that little intertie project, we're able to shut down an entire treatment plant. Saved us from, you know, ongoing operation and maintenance of a treatment plant, plus a clear well or tank that would need hundreds of thousands of dollars of renovations. Let's see, action number 3, I'm still on goal 1, strategy 2, goal 3, let's see, goal 4, I mean, currently working, so the action, conduct studies on the raw water delivery system to improve efficiencies and identify construction methods to maintain and enhance the cultural, recreational, and historical integrity of the system. Just sort of an update, but we're still currently working with Rick Lind and the N2 on creating a wildfire defense plan and identifying wildfire protection draft points, and that's grant funded. And also, earlier this year in January, we had a kickoff meeting with Rick Lynn, CBI, and since that kickoff meeting, there's been a couple of update meetings, but they're still working arduously on that effort. All right, strategy 3, upgrade and/or consolidated water treatment plants to improve efficiencies and reliability and reduce maintenance and operation costs. There are going to be some repeats in there because just there's some things that we accomplish that fit many goals and action items. So, where was I? Oh yeah. With respect to complete the land acquisition and preliminary engineering identified in the TWSOP, Treated Water System Option Plan. We presented an update to the Board of Directors in October of 2023 on Sierra Pines. And then more recently in July, you know, the board elected to hire an owner advisor for the Sierra Pines construction project. So making progress there, and we're still, you know, hopefully anxiously waiting any time now for a funding offer from the state on that. Action 2, I'm not going to talk about those again, but there are some repeats in there. Like I said, phase 1 through 3 of the Techite project has been completed. Strategy 4, enhance and optimize water storage facilities and provide backup power supplies at pumping stations and other critical facilities. Action 1, identify and prioritize and implement repairs, upgrades, and/or consolidations of water storage reservoirs or water storage tanks. I'm going to highlight that the new White Fir or Zone 4 tank and pump station will enable water to travel to lower zones of the upper basin system and will consolidate the current White Fir tank and so the old Zone 3 tank. So we're working, that's in progress, and we expect completion in that later on this fall or maybe early winter by the time that project's complete. And we're looking forward to having a ribbon cutting ceremony up there when that actually happens. You know, while we're talking about tanks, Abby, I know you gave me the stats and I don't have it exactly at my hand, but since 2000 we're down 21 tanks. We have 21 less tanks over how many years? Last 10 years?
I believe it was 10 years.
The last 10 years. we have 21 fewer water storage tanks, all of those in poor condition. That we are no longer responsible for. That's a really significant. We've reduced our numbers by 4 this last year. And we're going to continue that effort to replace or upgrade these tanks so that, anyway, that's 21 tanks that we don't have ongoing operation and maintenance. That we won't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on each one, either to replace or rehab. So those are significant savings. When we talked about, how are we going to show evidence that we're reducing costs? Those are some of the, when we're eliminating treatment plants and we're eliminating facilities, booster pump stations and tanks, those are all evidence of how we're saving ratepayer dollars, and that's in my estimation. So. Okay, moving on. Again, throw up the white flag. You have this document. If you want me to move on a little quicker, just let me know. But goal number 2 of 7, improve wastewater collection, treatment, and recycled water use through facility modernization. Action 1, create a new regional septic receiving facility, which we've just about completed. That work order to install the new septic receiving facility has been issued. And of course, we've just completed the regional wastewater treatment facility. That's a huge lift for us. It took a couple of years, 2.5 years or so to get accomplished, but it's done. Strategy number 2, repair and or replace aging wastewater collection pipelines, including the Twin Art Interceptor, lift station to avoid sewer spills. Action number 1, prioritize and implement a plan to repair and or replace collection system maintenance infrastructure. I'll highlight that we just completed the Mono Village lift station bypass completed. We removed a whole sewer lift station out of surface. It doesn't exist. No more operation and maintenance costs associated with that lift station. It's all fed by gravity down to regional now. Just completed that project. I'll also say that the Millvilla sewer lifts, Millvilla, that was Mono Village. This is the Millvilla sewer lift station improvement project, was completed in December. And okay. Goal number 3, develop partnerships for the benefit of the community. Strategy number 1, coordinate work with local agencies, city, county, special and school districts, tribes, community organizations, etc. Action number 1, work closely with local agencies to coordinate construction projects to maximize cost savings and reduce public inconvenience. I'm going to highlight that we have a coordinated project with the Tuolumne Band of Miwoks Indians for the 9 Sisters tank on the reservation. That's in progress. We expect that to be completed here pretty soon. And that's a mutual, it benefits the tribe, it benefits the TUD. They put a lot of time and effort and money into our infrastructure that has a direct benefit to their community, but it also has a benefit to TUD. Action number 2, set up periodic multi-agency meetings with staff and elected officials to establish local priorities and to make plans for joint activities. I'd like to highlight that we participate regularly, staff, your managers specifically, participate in regular meetings with Calaveras County Water District to discuss shared challenges and opportunities. Those conversations, we maybe have 2 or 3 a year. We'd like to have more, but we're both so busy. But we do get a lot of, there's a lot of benefit to having those meetings with those folks over there. And as well, we've met with Utica at times. So those have benefit. And then last October, we had our engineering group and some staff go visit CCWD to visit some of their tank sites. They've erected some new tanks over there and using new technology, and with thinking about our tank master plan, how that might fit in. So it's just more evidence that we're getting out there. And then the last thing I'll say is we just hosted a joint meeting with Jamestown Sanitary District in July.
Don,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw up the white flag.
Yep. Okay.
And that's mostly for our public members. I apologize that we don't have the list up on the.
Oh, yeah. That's my
For
fault.
you to be able, oh, you've got it. Oh, thank God. Okay. The only thing is, if I'm glad you folks can, were able to do that. I don't know about anybody else, but I guess because I don't have a life, I spent, I don't know how much time going through this thing. And I got a couple of thoughts on it. I went through it twice, as a matter of fact, because it's a voluminous list, to say the least. But I will say that all the years I've been on the board and the years prior that I have been watching and being involved with TUD, I have never seen so much accomplished. I mean, it's really, I think TUD really needs a pat on the back. This is, if you look at these various projects and things, many of them are support each other or are intertwined. And when that happens, that is where the ratepayer savings comes in big time. And it's hard to put those together as you go through this list. I think it would make this list just even more confusing and 10 times larger, but I think it needs to be stated that many of these projects support other projects that have been done or are intertwined, and that's where the huge savings comes in. And also in consolidation, how many of these projects consolidated what you were just talking about, dropping from 80 some odd tanks down.
59.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's stuff that the staff doesn't have to go out and take care of and put bubble gum in all the holes and things like that, you know. I mean, it's huge cost savings. Then we have, like you brought up, I think we've just about completely eliminated the troublesome materials, pipe materials, techite. Once again, that is huge savings because that's the stuff that caused call outs in the middle of the night for a pipe burst, and then also property damage to people's property from the water that got loose and so on. That darn Chucky, he's always out there causing trouble. Then going right along with that is the elimination of aged and failing infrastructure. Those lift stations and pump stations that you were talking about, that, I mean, some of those were pathetic, and now they're either been eliminated or completely rebuilt and are going to be good for years and years and not going to be causing our folks to have to go out and take care of them and have emergency repairs. And then fitting in with what Carolyn brought up during her presentation with the finances is how much of this has been done because of grant funding and leveraging the ratepayers' money. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Anybody else on the board have anything to say? If not, I'll bring it up to the public. Okay.
Well, I did want to try to get this out of my mouth. Is a couple of things that occurred to me as I studied this. And I apologize that there's so much here, and I want to go on, but here's something that also occurred to me that's new to me. I've known and understood and heard this over the years, but I just had a little bit special appreciation and acknowledgement. You know, it's really easy and sort of fun to go look at this new tank or this new booster station or hear about these treatment plants being taken offline. What I've learned to acknowledge and appreciate is all the effort that goes in way before you get to go out there and stick a shovel in the ground. It can be months, if not years, of planning and environmental work and land acquisition and all of these and design before we ever get to go out there and put a shovel in the ground. So this year I had a much higher level of appreciation and acknowledgement of that effort. The other thing, again, it's fun to look at all these physical things, but there's an awful lot of non-physical things we do. We take no shortcuts in our safety program. We have a very robust safety program where our employees invest hundreds of hours, collectively, hundreds of hours each year towards safety, right? So we dedicate a fair amount of time to safety. We spend a fair amount of time looking at legislative things that can impact the district. So it isn't always just the physical structures that we're taking care of here at T and paying attention to. It's all the other stuff. Take no shortcuts. You have a well-run operation. I do think there's always room for improvement. So I think that's just a way of life. But your staff is looking for ways to improve, what we do and how we do it every day. Anyway, that's the end of my spiel. Thank you.
Well, what is our experience mod numbers? Isn't it fantastic? I mean, as far as for workers comp and all that?
Our workers' comp EMOD is 0.91. So what that equates to is about $15,000 in a premium reduction. Because if you look at it, the average is 1.0 or 100%. And if we can come in lower than that at 0.91 or 91%, then that's, if the premium's $100,000, then we pay $91,000 instead of $100,000. So our efforts on the safety side, having low incidence of injuries and low frequency and low severity, reduce that to under 100%, which saves us money on the insurance side.
Well, the saving the money is awesome. I think it's great. The better thing is that none of our staff is getting hurt and doing some incredible types of construction work and so on. So I think that's the real bottom line, the biggie.
Yeah, thank you for saying so. Our superintendents and supervisors across the board and managers, constantly are reminded that this is something that they're responsible for with their departments, and they're on board, and we talk about it very regularly. And so yes, no, the pain and suffering of having people hurt is widespread. It's not just a direct cost. The indirect costs are far more damaging to a district. So having people at a workplace where they feel safe is, makes people more productive and lets them grow in their positions a lot faster. And so there's a lot of benefits to that. Thank you.
Okay, then we didn't have anything, then I guess bring it back to the board to, approve and file.
This is,
Don't need it? No? Okay, well, we like that. So I guess then we can move on to staff reports.
Okay, I'll go first. I have a couple of things. And again, my memory is not great, but last week, two things. I think it was Wednesday, September 4th. I attended a Jamestown Sanitary District special meeting. I was invited over the weekend prior to see if I could go, and I attended really just to listen in and maybe provide some comments. I provided some comments, but insignificant comments. The two things that were on the agenda to talk about, they had a proposal or some sort of a discussion item by Andy Komar Pace, who was our consultant engineer for regional, threw out a proposal to Jamestown about how to fix some of their issues. And he really pulled out a pretty cool rabbit out of his hat, in my estimation. So he is devising a way to help them out with not only getting to tertiary, but also taking care of their capacity issues at a fairly reasonable cost. That meaning many millions of dollars, but certainly less than 16 to 20 we were talking about before. So now whether or not, Pace can come through on that, I don't know, but he's an expert, and I wish him and Jamestown all the luck in the world as they go through that. They still gonna have to come up with a lot of money looking for grants and things of that nature. The second part of that meeting was their board adopted a resolution to accept the REAP grant. You know, they had a couple of $1 million worth of a grant to do some collection system assessments and improvement. Their board formally adopted and they're going to accept that grant with all of the contingencies. That was Wednesday, I believe. And then Thursday, I got to meet with Jeff Hollis. We got to speak for an hour. He had a handful of questions for me for the district. And so it was a nice hour I got to spend with Jeff. So that's the end of my report.
I got a question, Don. What was JSD's response to Andy Kumar's presentation? Was it positive? Was it with skepticism? How'd you read it?
Oh, I think it was met with positive enthusiasm. I'm probably the only one with any skepticism in the room, but I kept that to myself.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, Barbara.
Just a quick clarifying question on your meeting. Do we have an agreement with Jamestown Sanitary, like a cost share agreement for courts?
We do not currently have a cost share agreement for courts. What we do is they're a subscriber user, Carolyn, right? They pay a fee for a portion of the reclamation cost component of the service.
So what is the instrument or the document that we have with them that obligates them to go to tertiary?
Oh, that agreement. We do have an agreement. Eric, you're probably more opposed to say this correctly.
We do have a service agreement with them, and then they're also bound by our wastewater ordinance, which has our rate schedule in that. So both those are the governing documents. But to directly answer your question, the agreement between us and Jamestown says that they must produce effluent from their plant that meets the stricter of the two permit requirements we have. One for our plant or two for our reclamation system. And so since our plant is tertiary, they would need to meet tertiary requirements.
Okay. Anybody else from staff?
Real briefly, I just wanted to share some positive news with the board. There's been a lot of discussion about the importance of grants and consolidation this meeting. And in 2018, going way back 6 years, we knew we had 3 tanks in the Columbia and part of the Sonora water system that were in really bad shape, and we needed to take them down. Gopher tank, Saratoga tank, and the 420K tank, which is up in Gibbs. And so we devised a project, submitted a grant application. This board authorized us to submit, this back in 2019, I think is when we got the grant application submitted. But we couldn't wait for the state. They're quite slow in processing grant applications. So we moved forward with a lot of the infrastructure, Cuesta Heights tank, the Cuesta pump station, Redbud pump station. We've demolished the Gopher tank. We've demolished the Saratoga tank. We've demolished the 420K tank. And we've done that with ratepayer funds, but fortunately we were notified, Dawn was notified that we did get a grant for $2.6 million. Our goal will be to reimburse ourselves for hopefully somewhere around $1 million of eligible expenses, and then to take the remaining balance and build a new Pedro Y tank. So just some more good news on the grant front. It just took a long time.
Nothing for you, Abby?
Good morning again. 2 items to report on. I feel like a broken record on this every time, but our hazard mitigation plan, that is an annex of the Tuolumne County Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's a multi-jurisdictional plan. The latest on that, your board looked at that plan back in December of 2023. Since then, the county realized some additional requirements, some changes in the regulations that were subject to this plan. We made adjustments on ours. Nothing new to what our hazards are or how we respond to our hazards or how we mitigate our hazards, but just articulated a little bit clearer on how we engage the public on our hazard mitigation through multiple months of back and forth with the county and Cal OES. Cal OES signed off on it, said it met all requirements, and have submitted it to FEMA for their approval with the county's plan. There are 17 annexes within the plan. Ours was the first one that's being submitted. Normally they hold them back, but you'll recall we also have a couple of pending hazard mitigation grant applications with FEMA for the Lions Main Canal Resiliency Project, as well as the raw water storage reservoir at Sierra Pines. So they went ahead and expedited that submission to FEMA, and so they're going to do their review. Their template says that they will have an answer for us within 45 days. So that's the update on that. So when that does get back to us and we're ready to finalize it, your board will adopt that plan or have a discussion about adopting that hazard mitigation plan. The second item, this is kind of a fun thing for me that I do a couple of times a year is, and I've reported out on this, but on Friday, that's way back, September 6th. What month is it? I went to, and I had to write down this because I never get the name right, the Tuolumne Collaborative Construction Pre-Apprenticeship Training Program. They do that through the San Joaquin County Office of Education. They have an office over off of Comage and a warehouse where they teach folks over a 7-week program to do some basic construction work, framing, painting, some plumbing, things like that. They put them through a program. We actually have 2 employees that we've hired over the last 4 years or so that have gone through that program before they came to us. And one actually was in one of the groups that I spoke to a couple of years ago, and then he started on our temp crew and then now works in the distribution department. But I go there, talk about what TUD is all about, what we do, what kind of jobs we have available. And then they have usually a lot of questions for us and in what it takes to get hired onto TUD and those kinds of things. So Rocky Wolf and Kathleen Wolf run that program, do an awesome job. And so it's always a pleasure to go there. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. I guess with that, I'll bring it back to the board. Director Jacobs.
I have nothing to report that's new.
Director Balin.
Yeah, I had a meeting with Dawn, just kind of a not just an informal meeting about the historic properties management plan, which we're obligated to do. And I thought that was really productive. And I'm hoping that we can have a ditch committee meeting come out so we can, take a look at that and get that back into compliance. That's all I have to report.
All right, thank you.
No reports this time for me.
Okay, even though it seemed like all I did was TUD last week, I don't have anything to report. Oh, I'm sorry. President, you're hiding out there.
Yeah, I have nothing to report. Thank you, Ron.
Okay, and neither do I. Oh, yes.
One last thing, LAFCO. I just have a little LAFCO comment.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so we probably all read the LAFCO agenda where they are, the county services, the county support services are going away. And this is just a heads up, but I don't know what kind of fiscal impact that could have on us. So just, I'd be curious to know when the time comes. Thank you.
That is kind of a mess right now. It'd be very interesting to find out how that shakes out. So, okay, with that, I guess we will close this meeting at 11:10.
See you guys.
Feel better, Jeff.
Yeah, feel